let's zoom in a little bit at some of the gifts, let's say, staying with the theme of the season. Let's behold some of the gifts a year of full-fledged Trumpism has given us, and look at some of our feature stories for this week. And we're gonna start on the international level. Let us see what old Fashy Claus has bestowed upon the world this holiday season. So, starting with Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky is traveling to Florida to meet with President Trump today as the U.S. pushes a potential Ukraine-Russia peace deal. The talks are framed as urgent and could shape negotiations before the end of the year. The core disputes are still unresolved. Ukraine wants security guarantees, clarity on reconstruction, and limits on territorial concessions in the Donbass and the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. Trump is asserting control here while Russia maintains their maximalist demands. Trump says no deal matters without his approval. Putin continues to demand all of the Donbass, and diplomacy is unfolding alongside ongoing massive missile attacks on Ukraine by Russia over the holidays. Now, this is a peace deal that Trump has yet to negotiate. Let's look at one he has already negotiated, or at least takes credit for, and that is, a ceasefire in Israel to stop their bombing of Gaza. Well, turns out they actually haven't. Nearly 50 House Democrats this week urged the president to pressure Israel to stop violating the Gaza ceasefire, citing hundreds of alleged Israeli violations, mass civilian casualties, destruction of homes, and severe restrictions on humanitarian aid since the truce began. The lawmakers say Israel's response has been severe and disproportionate, pointing to airstrikes, shootings, the killing of children, and the destruction of more than 1,500 buildings, while noting Hamas violations did occur, but stressing that Israeli actions are driving catastrophic civilian harm in Gaza. They're urging Trump to use U.S. military assistance to force compliance, warning that continued violations risk collapsing the ceasefire and deepening the legal and moral crisis already facing Israel in international courts, including a genocide case against them at the International Court of Justice, as well as the International Criminal Court's arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, which the Trump administration has retaliated against with sanctions targeting ICC judges. Stick a pin in sanctioning foreign leaders you don't like. We'll be back to that momentarily. So the peace president, as he fancied himself on the campaign trail, also is continuing to pressure Denmark for rights to Greenland. The president reignited a diplomatic fight this week by appointing Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry as a special envoy to Greenland, openly repeating his claim that the U.S. has to have the island for national security and refusing to rule out the use of force. Denmark and Greenland forcefully rejected the move, with Copenhagen calling it an affront to Danish sovereignty, and Greenland's prime minister insisting the island alone decides its future, as EU leaders publicly backed Denmark. Now, as with his military and rhetorical aggression toward Venezuela, which we aren't even going to touch in this section, we're putting that to the side for now, still bombing boats in the Caribbean. Anyway, this indicates Trump is determined to gain greater control over what his recent national security strategy called the Western Hemisphere, a sphere of influence that he hopes will cover the whole of the Americas. And, the thing about these spheres of influence is that it never seems to take into account the desires of the people living within those spheres. Greenlanders overwhelmingly oppose becoming part of the U.S. Now, I don't know where Africa, a massive continent with a, ton of people living on it who have their own hopes and dreams and desires. Well, I don't know where they fall into these spheres of influence that Trump is dividing the world into with China and Russia, because the president ordered U.S. military strikes against Nigeria. There are ISIS-linked militants there. This is on Christmas Day. He claims they were targeting and killing Christians. The Pentagon confirmed the strikes were carried out jointly with Nigerian authorities, so hey, at least we got their permission before going in there this time. Trump framed the operation explicitly as religiously motivated, warning Nigeria over an alleged existential threat to Christians and escalating rhetoric that Nigerian officials and experts say it misrepresents a conflict that affects Muslims and Christians alike. Finally, in the realm of war and peace this week, and Chuck, I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this. The president announced a new Trump-class battleship as the centerpiece of a new Golden Fleet, claiming the Navy urgently needs bigger, faster, more powerful ships. The first vessel, the USS Defiant, would begin construction almost immediately and could take 2.5 years to build at a cost of $5 billion. This plan revives the battleship concept in name. I think Trump just liked to play the game as a kid, proposing massive surface combatants larger than current destroyers, potentially armed with nuclear cruise missiles, hypersonic weapons, rail guns, and directed energy systems, alongside a new class of smaller frigates. Defense experts are divided on this, with critics warning that the program prioritizes aesthetics and Trump's personal branding over real threats like China, while supporters argue these larger missile-heavy ships are needed to better defend aircraft carriers in an era of long-range and hypersonic warfare. That was a lot, but there are Chuck. Let me get your thoughts as a Navy vet, as someone who has served this country and risked their personal safety and their lives to defend this country. What are we doing, man? What are we doing?
To be honest, Scott, I've been asking myself that constantly this entire year. I mean, it used to be that the projection of military power was there to protect international shipping lanes, protecting interests in those areas, and making sure that piracy wasn't happening and those kind of things. What this is now focusing on, to me, it seems like it's anything at a whim. It's whatever catches his attention. It's kind of like, I hate to use the analogy, but kind of like whack-a-mole. Hey, this looks cool over here. Let me do this. Oh, wait a minute, I want to do this over here. I mean, wow. I mean, I'm not against anything with folks with like ADHD or something, but he looks like he's just shotting everything all over the place. Now, on the whole battleship thing, this was interesting to me because I went and I actually looked up the term. The Golden Fleet that he's mentioning is the Navy's bold investment to revitalize America's maritime industrial base, rapidly building and sustaining fleet, and fundamentally changing how we do business in order to keep projecting peace through power. Okay, I'm sorry. I think that Hegseth kind of went nuts on writing that one a little bit because the warrior ethos and all this good stuff. But yeah. I can tell you from experience that we retired battleships over 30 years ago for a specific reason. They, for one, are too bloody big, and they are basically floating targets. Yes, they carried a lot of firepower when they could, and could support land operations and those kind of things. So to give you an idea, the ship I served on, was a guided missile cruiser, and it was enough to basically level a small country off the face of the planet if it needed to. This thing, as they're talking about it, is over 300 feet longer and 60 feet wider than the ship I served on, and it's supposedly going to carry another 486 people more than what my ship carried. I can tell you from a number of different things. One, this thing is just not going to be practical. If they put everything on there, I don't see how that's going to work. I just don't. So the idea that, yes, let's build bigger, badder. Okay, well, that sounds great, but in the theater of war now, when you have dynamic environments with drones and hypersonic weapons and these kind of things, that ship will literally be a target that will not be able to defend itself against those kind of threats because it's just not nimble enough. There's just no way. So I invite everybody to go and look this up on the internet and see the size and what they're talking about with this critter, because it doesn't make any sense. Plus the price tag. That's the other part that just blows my mind. My ship cost about $1 billion to build, start to finish. This thing's $5 billion per ship. So you're building a ship for 5 times the cost to basically be a floating target. Make it make sense?
Yeah, well, yeah, like take note of that $5 billion cost per ship as we get toward the end of the show and we talk about what we're not buying with our money. It reminds me, Chuck, that episode of The Simpsons where Homer designs the car. I think this is like Trump with his box of crayons gets to design the battleship himself, and they trot him out there. Okay, Papa, we'll have a press conference for you. I don't think any of this stuff's actually getting built. At least I hope not.
I would. Oh, sorry.
What happened? What happened to the peace president? I mean,
so
stopping all the wars. 8, 9, 10 wars now. Stopped all the wars.
So I put out a post recently, actually. So I was just going through the quotes, and one in particular just stands out to me. There is no way to peace. There's only peace. And that was by Mahatma Gandhi. And I personally believe that most of my military relatives, the reason that they went, the reason that they committed was for peace, right? And right now we're buddying up with some of the most unpeaceful people in the world who are doing genocides in some way, shape, or form that we are seeing in 4K. So that's not a president, whatever he looks like, and especially a president that is a descendant of immigrants, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand how any of this plays into the ethos of a strong American military or prevention force for the sake of peace.
Well, I mean, Jesse, what do you think? How does this? I guess theoretically, and I don't agree with his assessment, but if you believe in this whole spheres of influence and these world giant powers sort of dividing the world amongst themselves in the name of peace, I guess you could look at things that way. I mean, but where do the people living in these places get to decide?
Right. And specifically, where do the people living in this place get to decide? Because you could ask, I mean, many thanks to, Chuck for your service. I see Blythe is in the chat. Thank her for her service as well. There's a lot of veterans I have deep respect for. I don't want to belittle or make light of those sacrifices. And, and most Americans want a vast reduction in our military expenditures, precisely because what exactly, and Scott, you mentioned this, what exactly is at risk here? Is China going to come in and conquer the country so that now we can't have childcare providers anywhere in the state? Oh, wait, that's what's currently happening under our record economy, right? What do we have to lose from other countries taking more of the game from us? Not much, because right now we have such a small share of the pie. And all these expenditures on the military aren't turning into quality of life upgrades for us. So why should we support this? It's naked that Trump, pivots for an election and talks to the working class and says, I want to be the peace president. And, when I was in Franklin Township, standing in front of, Aaron Freeman's best supporters for 12 hours, last election day in 24, people said the economy and peace, those are the two things that they care about. They want more money in their pocket. They want less bombs falling overseas. And, that rhetoric works pretty well to voters, but that's just not what's going on. And, the one thing I'll say is it's not just because Donald Trump's a bad person. You see the same thing under Democrats a lot of times. And it's because the military industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about has become this self-perpetuating, self-eating machine. Ouroboros is eating its tail and, it just keeps going because there's so many jobs on the line. It's too big to fail. So I think we need a bold vision, like the Green New Deal, like something like that, in order to put all these people to work, because the people working in, at Raytheon, people working, at Rolls-Royce here in Indianapolis don't necessarily just love war and they're bloodthirsty. They just need a job, and it's not their fault that this is the only jobs that are paying. So I just think we need to massively pivot our economy away from war and towards peace and infrastructure. God knows there's plenty of work to go around. So that's my rant.
Jesse,
yeah,
I want to tag on something to that real quick. That you hit on something just a minute ago with the quality of life concept. Okay, and I want to really kind of emphasize this for a moment. So sorry to get on soapbox. Those of us that served in the military served in some of the least favorable quality of life situations you ever want to imagine. I mean, if anybody goes on base nowadays, and I can tell you this from my experiences, they're not favorable living conditions. I mean, our military members are not paid near enough to survive on a single paycheck. I can remember as an E3, I mean, I think my greatest paycheck, I think, was maybe close to $800 on a paycheck, which I was, of course, at the time I was young and didn't realize, but that doesn't go very far, especially in today's world. So when you talk about quality of life, and I agree with Jesse wholeheartedly, we need to pivot how we look at the totality of our folks that are doing these jobs that are so instrumental to protecting our country and seeing what we do, because they live in some of the on base housing is horrible. They water quality often sucks. I mean, there's just we invest all this into a whole big battleship, but we forget we forget the folks that are actually going to be operating in those environments. And I think Jesse is absolutely correct. If we invest in those things, imagine what we could accomplish. Honestly. So sorry.
Can I piggyback off you two?
Please go ahead, Tabitha.
So just watching things evolve, right? Like, we left Ukraine out in the lurch, and look at what they're doing with drone technology right now. So, whether we reinvent our way of looking at self-protection through training, a whole new generation of drone operators and advanced technology that way, versus investing in a shit ton of arms and big ships that big boys like to shoot big things with, right? And maybe also, while we're at it, we've got a backlog with the airplanes and all these problems with airplanes. Like some of us have had several conversations about, there are people that have skills that are tradesmen that would love to be a part of some big, train system. I mean,
Yeah.
They took all of our technology and went to Japan with it 40 years ago. So maybe invest in your people in a variety of ways to make their lives better all the way around.
Yeah, 100%.